Hi, this is Kevin Tharp. I'd like to welcome you to this lecture on responsive design, an introduction to responsive design. Basically, what we're going to be talking about is that the change in the way that people access the internet, moving more to mobile devices, either a phone or a tablet or laptop computers, has really changed the way that web design is going to be done as we move forward. And that's what we're going to be talking about is how do you change the way that you design for the web so that you can accommodate for all of the different types of devices that people might be using to access your web page without having to design for the individual devices. And that overall is called responsive design, and it's something that has really only showed up in the last couple of years, but it's only really right now starting to gain traction within the web design world. And the introduction of HTML5 and CSS3 are very helpful in doing that. So let's take a quick look at what we're talking about. Essentially what we're talking about is what they call the three-screen access. So any individual is likely to access content on the web from any one of three screens, and those are the ones I mentioned. It's an actual screen on a laptop or a PC, a tablet device, or a cell phone device. So any one of those three screens. So when we're talking about three screens, that is the field of play that we are on and the area that we have to look at as when we are developing for the web. So let's take a look here. We've got in front of us here, we've got the Stout web page, and we've got it on, it's being represented on a relatively large monitor here. This is the traditional way that people would design for the web. You'll notice some things about it. It's fairly centered in the page. There's a lot of color and graphics and some motion in there, and this is a pretty typical page. If we were to have accessed this, if we go down to tablet size, you'll notice that the size of the screen is smaller, but the size of the content hasn't changed. And it introduces the scroll bar down here because it doesn't fit on your screen. So what that does is it means that this content isn't responding to the size of the device that we are utilizing to access that information, and so it has to be revised, or the user has to scroll. Now, in all fairness case, if I had accessed this on a tablet, it would have probably loaded a different page or a different size page, one that had been resized, but that would have had to have detected that I was on a mobile device and sent me to a different page. Whereas what we're looking for is a type of design that will accommodate for what's called the viewport. The viewport is the size of the window that the device is looking at, and we'll get into more of that in a little while. So this is the Stout homepage, and it forces us to go to scroll bars when we reduce the size of our window. Now, in all fairness, let's look at some other universities, larger universities than Stout, and see what they've done. Very similar kind of design. If we reduce it down to the tablet size, you'll see that again the scroll bars show up here. And to take it to just continue looking at some others, let's look at the University of Minnesota. Same kind of thing. Very similar looks. Very similar types of designs. All of them are using what is called a fixed width, so that they say that the size of their website is so many pixels, so that whatever size the viewport is, whether it's the full width of my screen, the size of your laptop, or the size of a tablet, or even a cell phone, if it doesn't direct you to a different type of presentation, then they're all doing the same thing. Now, let's contrast that with University of Notre Dame, which is a university that has taken on the concept of universal design, or not universal design, responsive design. Let me go up to the top of their page here. So this is what their page looks like when you come in here. You'll notice that the bottom of their page isn't on the screen. It allows you to scroll, and really the amount of information that's on this home page is tremendous, and the visuals are very nice. It allows them to take advantage of the screen that the user has got, and think about the amount of bandwidth that is involved in downloading this. If you were on a cell phone, you would not want to download all those graphics, especially if you were paying for each of the bits and bytes that are going to be downloaded. So what they've done is they've used what's called a responsive grid, and you'll notice that as I resize that, things start to change. And I'm just going to slowly move this down so that you can see, and I realize it's a little bit jerky, but that's because I'm recording and my system doesn't respond well. But you notice we get down to that point, and all of a sudden that image goes away, and they replace it with a smaller version. I don't have the scroll bar here that forces me to scroll left and right, even when I get down to tablet size. So their content is adapting to my screen size, and that's called a fluid grid. And you'll notice that the images resize and the content boxes resize as well, so that as I get narrower and narrower, and then it dropped down to another breakpoint that they've designed in, where they change the layout of the page to match the viewport so that it's more readily available. But what I was pointing out is that the width of their columns that they're using to put their information in expand, as do the size of the images to match whatever size is available to them. This is what is called fluid design, where things are able to expand and contract to fit the viewport, and that is part of the idea of responsive web. So we're going to take a couple looks around and see some other responsive web designs. I've done a Google search here just for best responsive web designs, and I came up with a site that has what they've declared the 20 best responsive web design examples of 2012. And I want you to see something else here, just to realize how current what I'm teaching you is. Even though these are talking about the best responsive web designs, they're still in a fixed width, or somewhat fixed width. There's a sort of a modified fixed width, in that when you get down to certain levels, it adjusts a little bit. But for the most part, what you see on this page is what you get. So let's go to this Boston Globe website, and here we have, it happens to be New Year's Eve 2012 when I'm recording this, and we're looking at the physical cliff. By the time you're watching this, we'll know what that turns out to be. But here's site, and let's just start reducing it down to see what happens to this, because this is one of the best responsive web designs. Now you'll notice that when I shifted down the width of the 3 different columns, this is a 3-column approach at this point, and so as we narrow it down, the size of the images are changing like this. It can be seen in this image here. The size of that image gets larger and smaller depending upon how much space is available for that image to play with. And see, it's getting smaller and smaller by degrees. Same thing with the columns that they're in. And then at some point you'll hit a tipping point, and at that tipping point is where they have designed in a change in the way that they have this design, so that you've gone from a page that's designed for a full-size screen down to something that has been designed for a tablet at this point. And even when you're on a tablet, there's different size tablets. So depending upon the size of your tablet, these would show up differently. And then you reach a point where they change and they say, okay, we're designing for cell phones now. So when it gets to another tipping point, and I haven't looked to see what these the pixel widths of these are, but what they're doing is they are responding to the width of the available space in my viewport. So what happens at this tipping point, again, we can use this image here because it seems to be consistent in the different presentations, is that when our screen gets down to that point of being what we'll call for phone, it keeps adjusting, and then when it gets down really narrow, it adjusts back up. So it says, okay, hey, wait, I've got enough room to present this image larger again, because it wants to use the same viewport. Because what happened is it got to the point where they were putting the text beside the image up to this point, but when it gets so small that it gets sort of ridiculous to try and read those things side by side, it shifts it so that the story falls below the image, and this goes into a different style that is customized for cell phones. And you could go through this whole site and look at the way that the different things shift. But I haven't changed web pages. They haven't sent me to a separate page for my tablet. They haven't sent me to a separate page for my cell phone. They have designed one page, and they have built in elements of that allow us to do a query. So it's called a media query, and it's part of Cascading Style Sheet CSS3 that allows your web page to say, hey, what size viewport is available, and then it adjusts the rules of how it presents the information based upon the viewport that is available at that time. So that's what we call, that is part of responsive design, the ability to query for the viewpoint, so media queries, a fluid design, meaning that the images and the columns change according to how much width is available to them, and this combination of designing for 3 screens. So that's what we're going to talk about.